everyone, hope you're having a great day. I wanted to discuss a few tips and ideas to try out for hiking specifically in the winter time. Alright, so a lot of us will be starting the Appalachian Trail pretty soon. I'll be starting in February this year, 2021. Can't wait to start. And when I thru-hiked last time in 2018, I started in February also. And if anybody remembers, that year was super cold, lots of snow, lots of snowstorms. And so I did learn a few things while I was out there about hiking specifically in the winter time. So I wanted to share a few of those things with you. In hopes that they help. Use what you can and disregard whatever's not applying to you. But a few things to take into account and consider when you are hiking in colder temperatures. First of all, and I did not know this when I started, but very, very important is your electronics. When you're out in cold weather, your electronics batteries are going to drain very fast. You need to keep them warm. So when I'm hiking, I keep my phone in my pocket or in my vest. Also I keep everything in my pack buried down so it stays warm. But specifically at night, when you get to camp and you're in your tent or you're in a shelter, before you go to sleep, have all your electronics, including your water filter, put them in a bag and put them and sleep with them inside your sleeping bag. You don't want your water filter to freeze because then it doesn't work. And you also don't want your batteries to drain and all of your electronics. So it needs that heat in the sleeping bag. So be sure you sleep with it. That's very important. Also, another thing to consider is staying dry and staying warm. No matter what you do, you're gonna get soaking wet out there. Even if you have the frog togs, best rain gear, no matter what you got, you are gonna get wet out there, trust me. It's going to be cold and wet at some point, probably lots of points. So be sure that you have a very dry set, a whole set of clothes to change into when you are in camp, specifically right before you get into your sleeping bag that you can change into and stay dry and warm. And have them in a waterproof bag inside your pack just in case your pack gets wet. That's super important that you have something dry to change into. And you are going to have to do that while you're out there, no matter what the circumstances are. You're going to get wet, and it can get pretty dangerous if it's pretty cold out there and you don't have anything dry to change into. I have noticed and found that when I got to shelters, everybody was very respectful. Sometimes I went behind the shelter and changed my clothes, but if there wasn't a whole lot of people there, and I asked the guys to just either leave the shelter or turn around. They were all very nice about it, and I was able to get into dry clothes without an issue. Or you can get into your tent and have some privacy and get into your clothes. But you want to do that as soon as possible when you get into your setup. If you're not going to go back out into the rain and you're in your tent for the night, try to get out of those wet clothes as quick as you can so you can try to warm up and stay warm. Another thing I learned was if you can, and I know this is not always the case, but try to consider this, is if it's pretty cold out or every morning you know it's pretty cold, try to camp right before a big climb. That way when you pack up and you leave camp and you're cold, your first hike of the day is straight up a mountain or on a tough section of the trail. You're going to get nice and warm and hot pretty quickly. That's one thing that was I tried to do in the colder days, colder months that I would start. So yep, consider that. I didn't use fires too often. When I would get to a camp, I just really preferred to get into my dry clothes and get into my sleeping bag or my tent, or get in my tent in my sleeping bag. And that's what I did. I didn't fool around too much with fires. It was nice if other people started them, but I did not go out of my way to start a fire ever, actually. I made it more of a priority to get into my tent and get dry and get warm. And that's the way I did it. If for those of you that are really worried about the cold weather, to be honest with you, once you're hiking and you're really moving, it's not that bad. It's you're moving so much and generating so much body heat. During the day, as long as you kept moving and didn't stop for long breaks or for lunch too long, I didn't have a problem with staying warm while I was hiking. It wasn't too bad, but you got to keep moving. And but it's really important that when you get to camp is when you need to make that a priority, to get out of your wet clothes, get into dry clothes, and get into your sleeping bag. So yep, that was a big one. Be sure that if you're trying to dry out your gear or your socks, don't put them too close to the fire. I've seen more than one pair of socks get lost with holes, or get ruined with holes inside because they got too close to the flames. So watch out for that. Some other tricks, and people, if you have any other suggestions, please leave them in the comments so other people can learn from your experience as well. But heating up some water and putting it into your Nalgene bottle and then putting it in your sleeping bag is a nice way to keep your inside your sleeping bag nice and warm and toasty. Another thing that I learned real quick and I loved and continue using when it's cold or not is a pee bottle. So even for women, I know big Gatorade, wide mouth Gatorade bottles worked out great for men out there. And I've got I packed it up in my pack now, but I have a wide mouth collapsible Nalgene bottle that I can use when I'm in my tent in my sleeping bag, because it is awful to want to have to get out of your tent or out of your sleeping bag to go and use the bathroom. So that was a game changer for me. So I carry that thing everywhere I go now, if I'm going camping or backpacking. But try to get something that you can use the bathroom so you don't have to get out and get cold. Even if the temperatures are not terrible, it's the wind that will get you. You've got to be ready for the wind. Be sure that your sleeping pad is got an R value that can handle the weather conditions that you're going into. And if you, you can have a sleeping bag liner, you can have a thermal sheet to put over your sleeping pad, but also trying to have some sort of a barrier between you and the wind is pretty good. And don't think that being in a shelter you're going to get that, because most of them are 3-walled. So one whole wall is open and that wind is going right in there, and it will get you. So that was a big problem when I was out there, is the wind. So be prepared to not only handle the colder temperatures, but to combat the wind if you're able to. Having a sleeping bag with a hood over it so you can keep your body heat in, that was a big thing. That's what I prefer. Now I know lots of ultralight people can go with gear, very minimal gear, and it works well for them. Everybody's different, so whatever you try things out, do your shakedown hikes, do some practice hikes, and see what works for you. But these were some things that worked for me. But be sure that you keep your water filter warm enough. If it gets below freezing, you need to keep it in your sleeping bag or keep it in your pocket, because you don't want that thing to freeze and be useless. Something I forgot to mention earlier, I wanted to talk about the elevation and temperature change when you're in higher elevation. So when you're trying to figure out where to choose, what shelter to choose and where to spend the night or where to camp out, just keep in mind that, of course, common sense, higher elevation is going to be a lot more cold than in a lower elevation. So if you can, try to choose a place that's maybe in a valley if you're able to, because higher elevations, higher shelters, they're going to get a lot of wind and of course colder temperatures being higher up. So you can count on it being anywhere from 5, 10, even up to 15 degrees colder the higher up you go on your location of where you're going to spend the night. So keep that in mind. I also wanted to mention that shelters and getting to a shelter early. If there is bad weather or if it's really cold or a lot of snow, try to make it a point to get to the shelters early because they do fill up. And if you don't have enough space in the shelters, then you're gonna have to figure out something and have to camp somewhere. And that's not always easy to do in awful weather. Also keep in mind that in the Smokies that not day hikers, but section hikers are going to have priority. They've registered and reserved a spot in those shelters, so they do have the right of way or first choice. Whoever, you know, if there's a lot of people that come to the shelters, and there's a lot of hikers that are coming through this year, so they're going to be having the first pick or spots of the shelter. Keep that in mind, and you may have to just be prepared to tent close by to the shelter. But that can be kind of a curveball if you're in really awful weather and not really expecting it. So keep that in mind. That is the tips I've got. That's what, from my experience, that's what some things that worked for me. And it was a rude awakening when all my batteries drained in the cold weather. They don't really tell you that going out. So I'm hoping somebody else can learn from my mistake and be prepared in that situation. Keep your electronics warm, keep your cell phone warm. Keep it right in your vest pocket or whatever you need to keep everything as warm as you need to. And you should be good to go out there. Don't be afraid of the cold weather. It is a lot of fun. I prefer hiking in colder weathers. That's why I'm starting in February. It is fantastic. The snow is beautiful. It's just so great to be in nature when it's colder. You get less chafing, at least I do in my armpits. I hate that. Less bugs to deal with. It's just a whole new experience if you're doing it in colder weathers, but you've got to be prepared and ready for it. So hopefully some of this information will help you prepare for those colder temperatures, and you'll have a fantastic journey when you do your thru hike. All right, have a wonderful day, everybody.